There have been challenges the past few days and last week in starting at exactly the time that I said we should start. And the challenge has been from me, not from anybody. I am going to find a way as to how to deal with meetings that I allow to happen during the breaks, because we end up not finishing on time. But that's my responsibility, so we'll try and improve on that. Ms. Hofmeyer, are you ready?
Indeed we are. Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to orientate ourselves for the afternoon, I envisage that we may need to sit a bit beyond 4 o'clock in order to complete Mr. Mahlangu's evidence. I have conferred with him over the lunch adjournment, and he has indicated he is in a position to stay on. If that is convenient, Chair, we can look at it again at 4 o'clock.
Yes, no, that's fine. But what's your estimation of when we might be finished if we go beyond 5 o'clock? Beyond 4 o'clock.
Chair,
would an hour be enough, or we might need more?
I think maybe until 6, if that's not going to stretch us too much. But it really does depend. My hope is that having placed some of the facts in the background setting, we will now be able to move with a bit more pace.
Yes.
But certainly not earlier than 5, I could say that.
Not earlier than 5. We might have to stop at 5.
Certainly.
And then make plans for tomorrow morning.
Indeed, possibly an earlier start then.
Yeah, an earlier start. So if we go up to 5, and then we start a little earlier tomorrow,
yes,
then we might be able to finish with him quite early,
yes,
and then continue with the next witness.
Indeed. The only challenge with our witness tomorrow is that he does not have capacity after tomorrow, in the sense that he flies back to Zimbabwe on Saturday, but I'm optimistic we will finish him in the course of the day. So that shouldn't be an issue for us tomorrow.
Sorry, but is he able to be available till late tomorrow?
Yes. That is fine. His flight, as I understand it, is only on Saturday.
Oh,
so we could complete it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic if we are pushed to have an earlier start with Mr. Mahlangu tomorrow, hopefully it won't cut in much to the day, and then a day would be sufficient for tomorrow's witness.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Ms. Mahlangu, I'm hoping that we can move with a little bit more pace through some of the aspects. And what I thought would be useful then, just at the outset, was to clarify the 2 corrections that you wanted to make, as I understand it, on your affidavit. They both relate to when certain events took place. And Mr. Mahlangu, just to assist you, I'm going to guide you to the relevant pages, but I understand there was an error in your first statement about the date on which BNP Capital received the award as transaction advisor. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
And you provided to us subsequently an email which reflects the actual date on which you received that letter of award. Chair, you'll find it, and Mr. Mahlangu, under tab 4, but it is an additional page that Mr. Mahlangu has provided to us, and so it is paginated page 116.1.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I now see something that I wanted to mention before lunch.
Yes.
You know, those pages that are marked PDM on my file, maybe it's all of our files.
Yes.
PDM is on the page number, the pagination number.
Yes.
That makes it difficult sometimes to see the pagination number.
Exactly.
So it might be good if later on, if possible, the pages which have got that problem could be replaced with pages where the pagination or PMD is not written on top of the pagination number.
Chair, we'll certainly take care of that. It can just be adjusted on the page.
Yes, yes.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Mahlangu, just to return to page 116.1, can you explain to us what that email is? If you look under tab 4, and you go just page through it, there are 2 pages, which were in your original statement, and then there's a 3rd page that's been inserted. Do you see that?
Yes, through you say.
Thank you. So at 116.1, I understand that's the email that you wanted to bring to the Commission's attention, because it relates to the date on which you received notification from SAA that you'd been appointed as transaction advisor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what date is it?
The 22nd of April.
Thank you. So for the purposes of the evidence, Chair, we'll take it that BNP Capital was alerted to its success in that bidding process on the 22nd of April. Chair, you'll recall earlier in evidence we'd actually queried this because the document that appears at page 115, which is actually the award letter, was dated 20 March, and we couldn't understand how that could be.
Yes.
We'd hoped Mr. Mahlangu would be able to assist us, and he has been able to.
Yeah.
The next correction relates to the date on which you were, in fact, appointed to source funds for SAA. And if you turn over the tab, Mr. Mahlangu, to tab 5, and you'll find there page 117, can you explain to us what that document is?
It's through you, Chair, it's a letter of award for sourcing of capital.
And when did BNP receive that letter of award?
On the 26th of May.
Thank you. So we'll take it as 26 May. This letter is dated 25 May, but is it your evidence that you received notification the following day, the 26th of May?
That's true.
Thank you.
Just 1 second. The referent is not here. Yeah, but somebody needs to adjust the echo. I think it might have been on hold. Cool. Yeah, not too good. Not too good. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mahlangu, we'll work with those dates as we proceed in the evidence. I'd like to then, before we go further in the questions and getting into the bid itself, just to make sure that we're on the same page in relation to your previous evidence. As I had your previous testimony, inline trading required a partnership with BNP to bid for the transaction advisor services because of the particular financial advisory expertise that BNP would bring. Is that right?
That's true.
Thank you. BNP Capital was to be the lead member of that joint venture. Is that correct?
That's true.
But I understood your evidence to be you never met with anyone from SAA. Is that correct?
That's true.
And am I to understand that no one else from BNP ever met with SAA representatives?
That's true.
And also, as I had your evidence, it was only Mr. Mgadi who met with SAA. Is that correct?
That's true.
And what about Mr. Brendan King? Did he meet with SAA?
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know?
Yes.
Did you ever meet him yourself?
No, I haven't. No.
You've never met him?
I've never met him, yes.
Okay.
What role was he going to play in the JV, Mr. Mahlangu?
Through you, Chair, I think as far as inline trading was concerned, there wasn't any, especially from our part as BNP Capital, because initially, as I've indicated, that we had Mr. Mngadi who was representing inline trading because all the documentation for inline trading came through him. So in our view, he was actually the representative. So when at the 11th hour, he changed the details and he put Brendan's detail. So on our part, we thought it was just a sort of a profile change from their side, because I mean in any business, in any company, if you partner with me and then I put my employees' CVs and no one questions me. You know, you'd basically assume that those are the actually CVs that are relevant for that particular exercise. I think on our part, that's how we viewed it. So we didn't actually question as to why Brendan hasn't actually showed up, why hasn't he actually come to the meetings. But I think maybe for obvious reasons that we've actually never attended any meetings, so that was responsibility.
So am I correct from your understanding when I say that Brandon King was inserted in the place of Mr. Mngadi wherever there were references to Mr. Mngadi in the proposal that your team had prepared for the bid?
That's true. According to inline trading, that's information in the email we got. Hence, you will see even from the early letter of award that Mr. Mngadi was there. Even the SA guys, they actually been insisting him from the word go when we actually got even the award. So as far as BNP Capital was concerned, that was our position, to say he's actually part of inline trading.
Mr. King, is that right?
No, Mr. Mngadi.
But then why have a bid submission that doesn't refer to Mr. Mngadi at all?
As I've indicated through you, Chair, that there was actually a turn of events, yes, where Mr. Mngadi actually asked our, especially Mr. Moyo, on the eve of the submission, because that was, I think it was due on Tuesday, on the weekend, to say, can Mr. Moyo remove his details? Yes, as far as the bid submission is concerned. So, fortunately, Mr. Moyo did that, and given that the RFI was due on Tuesday, so I didn't actually have an opportunity. Hence I said, as far as this email is concerned, I saw it about 2 weeks ago when I actually met with Mr. Moyo. But eventually, when I actually asked him what has happened, he said, no, actually Mr. Mngadi asked him to do so. So he never actually gave me much explanation about it.
And Mr. Mahlangu, you've referenced what needed to be in the response to the RFI. You'll also be aware, I'm sure, that Mr. Brendan King was given as the representative of inline trading when you submitted the bid later in March 2018. Do you recall that?
That's true.
And by March 18, had you made any inquiries as to the role that Mr. King was going to play in the JV?
No, and for obvious reasons that we've never met Mr. King, number one. Number two, all the information for inline trading came through Mngadi. So we had no reason not to believe that he is not representing inline trading.
Was Mr. Mngadi going to be remunerated in some way for all the work he was doing in relation to the JV?
Obviously, through the JV agreement that we're actually putting together, yes, the inline trading was going to be remunerated, as far as I'm concerned.
That JV agreement was never reduced to writing, was it?
No, it wasn't.
And then if inline trading was going to be remunerated, was it not relevant to know the rates of the individuals in inline trading so that you could put that through in your pricing for the bid?
As far as the rates are concerned, the rates are done not according to individuals, but according to the level of seniority. So when we actually did the bid, it was according to the level of seniority.
So did that pricing schedule that you provided then include information about Mr. Mngadi and Mr. King?
Definitely. I think it was a question of not necessarily include, but the responsibilities and the agreed split going forward. I think the reason why we couldn't then finalize it was because the letter of appointment made a provision that we're supposed to sign an SLA with SAA. So we're actually waiting for that particular SLA, the terms and conditions for that SLA, for us to actually conclude our engagement.
Mr. Mahlangu, were you aware when you submitted the bid that you needed to identify the percentage income split as between the different members of the JV? Were you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay, let's go to it if we can. You'll find it in the soft file that I provided, which is just our reference point for today. And if you go to the internal page 13 of 55, which for the record is in Ms. Nancy's bundle, which is Exhibit DD2 at page 209. This is a section of the bid that BNP Capital submitted. And you'll see the first heading there under clause 18.2.6 refers to part 6. It refers to the BEE submission. And it reads, bidders must submit their triple BEE certificate. Consortiums or joint ventures must submit a consolidated triple BEE certificate. And then it goes on, and this is the point I was raising with you. Okay. Each member organization must submit the percentage income split as per the consortium or joint venture agreement. The workload split must also be clearly defined and indicated. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And I have your evidence to be you weren't aware that you needed to do that when you submitted the BNP Capital bid?
I wasn't aware of this aspect.
Right. Were you aware that you had to submit a consolidated triple BEE certificate for the members of the JV?
Through you, Chair, it was not a requirement then because we took a lead position.
Mr. Mahlangu, I need to follow that up with you. We've already had clarified in your evidence that you accept that you bid as a JV with inline trading. Is that correct?
Yes, as a consortium.
As a consortium.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about a JV agreement that you were in the process of finalizing.
Through you, Chair, hence I said I think we're using those two words loosely. I think for the purpose of this discussion. But as I've indicated in my statement, that what I've as far as the consortium or JV, that we had in place was unincorporated, and we haven't actually even, it was not, finalized as far as, written documentation is concerned.
Yes, no, I have no difficulty that it wasn't in writing, but the nature of your bid was a consortium or joint venture with inline trading, correct?
That's true.
And if we read that sentence on the page we're looking at, it's under the heading 18.2.6 part 6 BEE submission. You'll see the second sentence there says consortiums or joint ventures must submit a consolidated triple BEE certificate. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Do you understand that to mean you must submit a consolidated triple BEE certificate?
Yeah, that's what it meant, but our understanding is based on our experience as far as this type of structures are concerned. So, just to add on that, we're not even made aware of this particular aspect when we submitted our own bid.
Well, it's in the bid submission that you filled in, Mr. Mahlangu. If we go to internal page 5 of that document, if you go back a bit, and for record purposes, that is to be found in Ms. Nancy's bundle, Exhibit DD2 at page 205. Do you see that this is the bid submission you compiled for BNP Capital?
Yes.
And so if we page from that page, page 5, you would have found at page 13 the provision we've just read. Do you see that?
Yes.
But I take it at the time you were not aware of that requirement?
No.
And I take it you then accept that if it was a requirement of this bid and you did not comply with it, you ought not to have been awarded the tender.
That's true.
Thank you. If you just remain at that internal page 13, which is in Exhibit DD2 at page 209, you'll see there's also a part there on pricing schedule. It says bidders must submit a detailed costing schedule. Do you see that?
Sorry, on what page?
Apologies. So we're on internal page 13 of 55 in that soft file. That was the page we were looking at previously. Okay. And then I was just drawing your attention to the second clause there, 18.2.7, Part 7, which has the heading Pricing Schedule, and it says their bidders must submit a detailed costing schedule. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And it says all prices submitted must reflect the total landed costs of the proposed products to SAA. The relevant Incoterm is DAP, Johannesburg SAA warehouse, and include all applicable taxes. I take that to apply where it's a procuring of products. But insofar as it related to this bid, the requirement was for a detailed costing schedule. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Did you supply one at the time of submitting the bid?
No, I didn't. And can I just talk to it?
Certainly.
Yes. I think as far as the wording here is concerned, as I've indicated at the beginning, that how we viewed it was us being a lead and heavy subcontractor. But having read this, I can understand why you keep on coming to this point, because it actually moves from consortium to joint venture, which basically makes these particular requirements. But as far as our submissions were concerned, we're viewed as a lead bidder and with inline trading as sort of a subcontract, even though it doesn't actually reflect in our documentation.
Understood.
But I agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahlangu, and I appreciate that. Just in terms of your pricing schedule, though, whether you were presenting it as the lead or as a member of a consortium, do you accept that no pricing schedule was provided when you submitted the bid on the 18th of March 2016?
That's not true. It was submitted.
Then why was it resubmitted in April 2016?
I'm not aware of that.
Let me take you to the relevant correspondence then. You'll find it in, you'll now need to actually take out Exhibit DD2, which is Ms. Nancy's bundle. Chair, you should have it there. Yes, we had looked at it earlier. And you'll find the relevant correspondence at page 282 of that bundle.
Sorry, it's exhibit? I mean, it's the...
Page is 282.
Yes.
Mr. Mahlangu, if we start at the bottom of the page, we will then be able to read this correspondence in chronological order. You'll see below the middle of the page an email there. Could you please tell us who it is from and who it is to?
It's through you, Chair. It's the email from Silas. Yeah, I can't say the surname proper. Which was sent to us on the 8th of April, 2016, to me and Mr. Mngadi, which is written, the subject is appointment of a transition advisor. It says, Dear Daniel, please send to me via email a copy of BNP recent financial statement. Is it possible for me to get them today as we are behind time?
Thank you, Mr. Mahlangu. Can I just pause at the sender and recipients of that email correspondence? Just locate ourselves in time. We're on the 8th of April 2016. Do you see that for the email?
Yes.
And at that point in time, as I have the evidence, the bids had been submitted on the 18th of March, but no decision had been communicated to you yet, because we just clarified in your evidence you only got the result from SAA on the 22nd of April,
That's
correct?
True.
So this is in the period between bid submission and final decision by SAA. Do you accept that?
That's true.
Why was Mr. Matsaudza emailing you and Mr. Mngadi about this BNP Capital's bid?
I wouldn't answer that. I don't know.
You don't know?
Yes.
Can I raise with you my query about it?
Yes.
You see, the bid that went in on the 18th of March made no reference whatsoever to Mr. Mngadi. Is that correct?
You mean as far as the information concerning
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
He'd asked previously, the prior month, for all references to him to be removed. Do you recall that?
Yes, that's true.
So I'm just struggling, and you'll tell me if you don't know, but why would SAA then know to email Mr. Mngadi in relation to a BNP Capital bid that made no reference to him on any of the documents?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know that.
So there weren't interactions that you had with SAA in that period to say, and by the way, Mr. Mngadi is with us in this bid?
No, but remember the RFI was a discussion between Mr. Mngadi and the gentleman called Silas here that we got. So it started before that.
Yes, but at that point, he had not yet approached you about a partnership with BNP Capital,
That's
had
true.
he? Indeed. So I think you'll understand the force of my query. What Mr. Msaudza is emailing here is in relation to the people he understands to be in the BNP Capital bid. Do you see that?
That's true. But at the same time, I would like to, because when you actually send an RFI, Mr. Mngadi could have been part of the emails that have been sent to Mr. Silas, because he kept on requesting quite a lot of information. So I can't, that is what I'm saying, given the information, it becomes very difficult as to why. But there's
Understand.
been some correspondence prior to this.
I just wanted to get, for the records purposes, whether you could assist us with that oddity, as I saw it on the face of that email. But you don't have personal knowledge, as I understand it.
That's true, yes.
You also were not aware that Nedbank bid for the same transaction advisor services at the time, were you?
No.
If I can take you to 2 pages of that bid, Mr. Mahlangu, you'll find it earlier in Ms. Nancy's bundle, that's Exhibit DD2, and you'll find it at page 198. Mr. Mahlangu, I take it that this is not a document you were aware of at the time. Is that correct?
That's true.
As I see that document on its face, it's dated 18 March 2016, and it is what appears to be the covering letter to an appointment of a transaction advisor to provide financial advice to SAA. And it reads in the first sentence, "Thank you for your invitation to tender for the appointment of transaction advisor." Do you see that?
I do, yes.
If you go over the page to 199, there is an extract that has been included in this bundle from the Nedbank bid for those services. Do you see under the transaction team on that page are, amongst other people, a reference to Masocha Mngadi? Do you see that?
I didn't get that page.
Apologies, Chair. It's the next page, 199.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a page of the Nedbank bid dealing with the team composition. And do you see under the heading there?
Yes, I do now.
You do. There's a heading Client Relations. You've got that? Sort of just above midway on the page.
Yes, I do.
And then there are a series of 4 individuals referenced there. Who is the second individual in the Nedbank team? On the line below Client Relations. If you go across the 4 names there.
Are you talking about Putti?
Well, let's go through. If you read from the left under Client Relations, you've got Remo Moyo.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's true.
Who is the second individual?
It's Masocha Mngadi.
Masocha Mngadi.
Yes.
He's the person you're engaging with as inline trading for your bid. Is that right?
That's true.
But at the time, you had no knowledge of his association with Nedbank.
That's true.
Thank you. Ms. Mahlangu, if we then return to page 282, because that was the email correspondence that I said was relevant to the pricing that you put forward after the bid submission. You'll remember
282.
282, Chair.
Okay.
We were in the second half of that page to begin with, because that was the email from Mr. Matsaudza to you, copied to Mr. Mngadi, asking for the recent financials. And then as I have it above that is your response. Is that correct?
Are we still on 282?
Yes, indeed.
She's referring you to the second email from the bottom of that page.
Oh, yes, I can see that.
Okay.
Thank you. What is the date of that email?
It's the 11th.
And and who sends it, and who is
That's
it to?
11 April 2016.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
It's me,
It's you, and who are you sending the email to?
to Silas,
And Mr. Matsaudza, and who is it copied to?
to Mngadi.
Mr. Mngadi.
Yes.
And what does the email reflect?
It's the pricing and the financials.
Yes, let's read it if we may.
It's, please, dear Ms. Silas, please find attached financials and pricing for attention.
And then if you go over to page 284, Mr. Mahlangu, we didn't deem it necessary to attach all of the financials that you submitted with this email. We
Okay.
simply attached the pricing. That was one of the attachments. You'll see that at 284. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
So in fairness to you, Mr. Mahlangu, that's why I was asking you why you submitted your pricing after the bid submission. Is that not what we see here?
There was a clarification of our pricing. It's not true. If I take you through to the same document that you have in PN 246, that was our pricing.
PN 246.
Yeah, PN, okay, the same file, but it's
Yeah.
246.
246.
Yes, that's what we actually submitted. And then we have actually been, through you, Chair, been asked to clarify it further.
Okay.
Let's go to 246, if we then may. So there I have under Section 6, project costing. It reads, the consortium fee will be as follows. The raising fee will be charged at 1.25% of the amount raised. Do you see that?
Yes.
Why was that relevant to the bid for transaction advisor services when it was not requiring any funds being raised?
Through you, Chair, when it's actually standard, when we actually send our documentation, it comes together with this. So it's a template that we have, and all the fees are actually upfront.
I'm not sure I understand that. You were bidding for transaction advisor services, is that correct?
That's true.
And we've established earlier that is a very different thing to sourcing of funds or funds raising, is that correct?
That's true.
So why would you bid for transaction advisor services with reference to a fee for fundraising?
As I've said again, this is our standard proposal. So all our proposal comes with a fee, so that just in case we get appointed, people actually understand exactly how we actually cost ourselves.
Right, then you go down and you say retainer fee will be charged at an hourly rate as indicated in the table below. This will be offset from the raising, I think that's supposed to be fee, when a project is funded. Is that correct?
That's true. Can I provide clarity here? I think at this point in time, one didn't actually have a clear idea as to how things are going to actually pan out, as to what's the nature of the beast of this, work that we're supposed to have done. So we just provided our standard to say there's a retainer that we do, and when it's final capital raising, this is how we do. As far as advisory work, this is the rate that we charge. Given that this information was submitted at the bidding stage, at the RFI stage. So as we progressed and moved, now we're forced to narrow down the specifics. So hence the costing you find on 284.
We'll follow that up, if we may, in a moment, Mr. Mahlangu. But if we go down to the hourly rates on that page, what I'm interested in there is I see no reference to an individual from inline trading in that table. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But these were the consortium fees, correct?
These were the sort of standard fees as per our standard fees at the office, yes.
If we could, let's start at the top of the page. What I understand this page to be detailing is the consortium's fee, correct?
That's true.
The consortium comprised BNP Capital and inline trading, correct?
That's true.
But the table does not reflect any rates for inline trading's representatives. Is that correct?
Yes. Through you, Chair, I think there was just an error, why they're not included when we actually mentioned consortium. It was just an error on our part.
Did you know the rates of the representatives of inline trading?
No, not at this point.
So you would have needed to insert them in order to be compliant with the bid that required you to specify the particular breakdown between consortium members as to what fees they would be charging, correct?
At this point in time, we more or less have an idea. So it was not a question of us understanding exactly how much they charge, but it's for us to actually to send sort of indicative numbers, because these are very indicative numbers to them. Because as I've indicated, it was at the point of just requesting information from us.
Right, we'll move to what was put in the actual bid submission by the 18th of March. But I understood when I asked you the question earlier, had you previously submitted your pricing for the bid? You took me to page 246, is that correct?
That's true.
But what you're clarifying now is this was only submitted at RFI stage, not at RFP stage, correct?
That's true.
Right. So we'll look.
Sorry, I can't confirm it now. Yes, because I don't have the details.
But you think it's true, but subject
Yes.
to confirmation?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes, as I have your evidence, you were explaining why it was rough and ready at this stage. It's because it's only at the information stage, correct?
One, information stage. Two, I guess it was a question of time as well. Yes, because we're moving at a fast pace.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So what we have is the picture of what you submitted at RFI stage now. We'll jump in due course to what pricing information was submitted with the bid on 18 March.
Okay.
Thank you. But I would like one point of clarification on your response to the RFI. And for that, if you'll go to page 281 in the bundle you're currently busy with, that's Exhibit DD2. So this is section 6 of that response, which has the heading, helpfully pricing schedule, because you'll remember that's what I'm interested in, is when was a pricing schedule submitted?
Yes.
And what I read there, Mr. Mahlangu, but I would like your help on understanding it, is it reflects there, because of the envisaged methodology and complexity of the project, we propose a fee of R1 excluding VAT, plus a fee to SAA on the successful adoption for implementation of our advice as detailed above. So just tell me about that fee of R1 excluding VAT. How is that going to work?
To be honest with you, I think there was an error on our part, hence the fees that were discussed in prior pages.
Because it wouldn't make sense
Yes,
to bid
it
for
doesn't
this
make
at
sense.
R1 excluding VAT.
It doesn't make sense.
Right. So then let's move ahead. We're all agreed it doesn't make sense to bid at R1 for this transaction advisor services. We also have your evidence that what we saw previously was not the final pricing. But then we move to the question of why was pricing then submitted after the bid was put in? Because the
I'm
only...
sorry, Ms. Hofmeyer.
Apologies,
Please don't
Chair.
forget your question.
Certainly.
Can we go back to 281? You have said that reference to R1 excluding VAT was an error. That kind of puzzles me because you are in business, BNP is in business, and doesn't that relate to what it might ultimately charge, even if it's not exact? Isn't that an area where you would particularly pay special attention, because you know that if you get the tender, you know, the client needs to have a reasonable idea, at least, if not the exact amount, even at that stage, at least a reasonable idea of what it might cost them to prefer you.
Through you, Chair, I think that there was a duplication, because if you look at the 2.46 and 281 are the same thing, the pricing schedule, which is under Section 6. So it was
Okay.
explained. So hence I'm saying the narrative, I mean the discussion on top, which is the one that I'm saying it doesn't actually make sense. But it was explained if you look at
246.
246, which is Section 6, and then you go back to Section 6 again, which is pricing schedule. So perhaps what my team has done is they've realized that it was actually discussed and just left this thing as is.
Yes, okay, no, that's fine.
Well, if I could follow up on that, Mr. Mahlangu, because at 246, there's no indication of what this is going to cost SAA, is there? Because, and let me explain why I say that in fairness to you, all that the table reflects is rates, but it does not reflect how much time you thought was going to be spent, and hence how much would have to be paid by SAA if they chose you for these services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the only part of this document that actually gives a fee is the one at 281, which reflects the fee that we're all agreed can't possibly be the fee. Is that correct?
It's based on this file, yes.
Thank you. Right, if we then go to when the proper pricing schedule, the one that actually detailed a total of 2.6 million, was provided to SAA. I put to you earlier that it appears to only have gone to SAA as an attachment to your email of the 11th of April. And let me take you to that page in fairness. You'll find it at page 282. It's the next page. You'll recall we looked at that email a moment ago,
Yes, that's true.
and we were focusing on the one you sent to Mr. Matsaudza, and it reads, please find financials and pricing for your attention. And then we went over to 284, and that was the pricing schedule which was attached to that email. And I put it to you then that this was a submission of a pricing schedule after the bid submission date had passed. Do you see that?
Yes, however, it was just an explanation of the numbers, as I've said in your previous statement, that what we've submitted was not just indicative, and then now they have to actually firm down as to what exactly that we're submitting.
But Mr. Mahlangu, you had to bed down your pricing before you submitted your bid before the closing date on the 18th of March, didn't you?
It's true, however, it depends on the work at hand, because in some instances, you're not sure how long this thing is going to take, and you give them an indicative because you don't even know how much, what amount of work that is involved. So in most cases, even currently, would actually send our prices. It's only when we're being successful or in the process of client wants to compare apples with apples, because others put a price, others put rates, and then say to you, send us the rates so that we can compare apples with apples.
Ms. Mahlangu, do you accept that you had to submit a pricing schedule with this bid?
Yes.
And the pricing schedule we looked at that was provided in response to the RFI contained the meaningless fee of R1 excluding VAT, correct?
That's true.
And by the 18th of March, when the bids closed, there was no further pricing schedule that had been provided by BNP Capital, correct?
Okay, sorry, through you, Chair, let me go back. It was actually provided, but through rates. So remember what has actually happened here is it's not like the client, they're seeing BNP for the first time. Yes, we actually provided information, we've given our indication of pricing, and And the second time is they want to firm up as far as that pricing is concerned.
Did they ask you to firm it up?
They ask us to actually send a pricing schedule because what we have done, we just send the rates.
Well, Mr. Mahlangu, the only email we have relating to correspondence after the bid was closed on the 18th of March, and when you were awarded the tender on the 22nd of April, is the email at the bottom of page 282. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And do you see that what Mr. Matsaudza asked you for there was a copy of your financial statements? He made no reference to a pricing schedule.
That's true.
So other than this, was there any other correspondence from SAA that required you to put through your pricing schedule?
I can't remember. I mean, it's been 2000. It happened in 2016. I can't recall all what basic transpired. But as far as from this information that I have before me, I could tell that based on our pricing, that was not specific to a number, but to rates. Then we actually have. I guess they wanted to compare apples with apples. Hence, we've been asked to send this.
Well, maybe let's ask this. You said SAA asked you for clarification. How did that request come to you? Was it telephonic? Was it
It's
by way of written communication, or did you hear from Mr. Mngadi that that's what they wanted?
It's via email.
Via email?
Yes.
Is that email in this bundle that, or is it anywhere here before me? Have you seen it in the bundles in preparation for giving evidence? Is it something you have recently seen?
No,
You
Chair.
haven't seen?
I haven't seen it.
Okay. But are you sure that there was an email asking
Definitely.
for clarification?
Definitely, because I mean, even our response was via email. So
But, Mr. Mahlangu, I must probe that further because you supplied your pricing schedule in response to an email that didn't ask for it. Are you saying that there's another email that asked for it?
what I'm saying is the pricing that we sent was actually on rates, and we've been actually asked to send to firm up on the price because they couldn't actually get down, compare apples with apples. So we had to actually send that pricing. But as to, because this thing happened in 2016, as to whether that communication is in one of these files, I can't.
Ms. Mahlangu, in
But-
fairness to you, we have found through the Commission's engagements with SAA no other email than this one at the bottom of page 282 that requires you to provide your financials and makes no reference to pricing. It's not impossible that such an email exists, but we'd ask for your assistance if it does exist on your records to provide it to us in due course.
Yeah, I'll try, because I've been battling with my records, yes.
Certainly, but let me put the proposition to you then. If it was a requirement of the bid that you submit a pricing schedule before the 18th of March 2016, do you accept that BNP Capital did not do so?
Through you, Chair, I don't agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you accept that if BNP did not, as a matter of fact, do so, then its bid would not have been fully compliant?
Through you, Chair, hence I'm saying I don't agree.
No. I'm saying, assume that you are
We
wrong.
haven't.
Assume that you are wrong. Assume that, in fact, the pricing wasn't sent through before the closing date. If that is the position, would you
Definitely.
accept that then the bid was not fully compliant?
Through you, Chair, definitely.
Okay.
And just one follow-up to that, Mr. Mahlangu. It was on the email of 11 April that you provided the pricing schedule that indicated that the fee to SAA would be 2.6 million or thereabouts. Is that correct?
I don't have an email. What page are we on?
Apologies. It's at page 284. It's the pricing schedule that you attached to your email of the 11th of April. Do you see there you actually do now attribute hours to the rates, and you give a total there, including VAT, of 2689830. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
So that was BNP's fee for the transaction advisor services if it was awarded the tender, correct?
That's true.
and prior to 11 April 2016, that fee had not yet been made known to SAA, correct?
That's true, only the rates, yes.
Thank you.
So just to make sure that I understand, do you accept that this fee was not made known to SAA before the closing date for the bid?
Yes, I do. However, what I'm saying, Chair, is that only the rates were made.
Yes.
No,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. But the absence of this information in the bid would mean, would it not, that SAA would not have any reasonable idea as to how much, or more or less how much you would charge, it would have to pay you if it preferred you, if it preferred BNP?
That's true, sir. Chair. Hence, they had to actually send, the clarification email.
Afterwards?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mahlangu, just to conclude the aspects on inline trading, at any point in 2016, did you become aware that inline trading is a car dealership?
No.
So up until the point that the award was cancelled with SAA, you had not engaged further with inline trading about its line of business, had you?
No.
Then am I to take it that you took that description that Mr. Mngadi provided on Saturday the 13th of February as the accurate description of the business of inline trading?
That's true. However, over and above that, for him to supply us with all the information and their CVs. So that's basically the position we're at that point in time.
You got certain information from Mr. Mngadi about inline trading that was submitted with the bid, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I've certainly seen in the documents their SARS certificate that you spoke about earlier, correct?
That's true.
I've seen indication of their bank account details, is that correct?
That's true.
But you made reference to CVs, and I haven't seen CVs. Can you assist me with that?
I think as far as this file is concerned, I'm not sure whether those, those CVs are actually contained. But what I remember is the profile for is it Mr. King? Yes, that's what I remember.
Yes, he's certainly included in a team structure diagram that I've seen. You'll find that in Ms. Nancy's bundle, which is Exhibit DD2, at page 273. Do you see that diagram on that page?
Yes, I do, through Chair.
And I see you at the top of that page, identified as lead project director. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And then tell us what position Mr. King was to occupy.
As far as our understanding is concerned, as I've actually indicated at the beginning, that when we see Mr. King, in our view is, and Mr. Mngadi, they're actually in the same position. Because as far as our understanding, that's going to be our responsibility, to actually liaise with the client, one, to coordinate all the inputs that they get from the client, and then provide us with actually whatever input that they get. So that was our responsibility. I mean, that our understanding at the time when this thing was put together.
I understand, but you indicated that the profiles of the people who would come from inline trading were provided by Mr. Mngadi. Is that correct?
That's true. That's my understanding, yes.
Indeed. My challenge with this document, though, is that the only place where Mr. King is referenced is actually in this diagram that we're looking at page 273. And actually, when you get to give the qualifications and experience of your team members later in that document, everyone from BNP Capital is there, but no one from inline trading is there. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay, but just for completeness, let's go to it. It's at page 279 of that same bundle, Exhibit DD2. See, as I have it, we're progressing in the document that was submitted. We start with your team structure. That's the page we've just looked at with the diagram. And it's identifying yourself as the head, and amongst the people in second command are Mr. King. And now you come to page 279. What is the heading of that section of this proposal?
Team qualifications, sorry.
Team qualifications, thank you. And then who are the people who are referenced there?
It's BNP Capital people.
Indeed. So you accept the proposition I put to you, which is that there's no information at all of anyone from inline trading.
That's true.
Thank you.
Under the column with your qualifications there is MBA dissertation. What did that mean? Under the column at page 279 that gives your qualifications, there is MBA dissertation. What did that mean? I just asked because I didn't see that qualification when we were dealing with your qualifications earlier on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. At some point in my life, I did MBA, yes, and I was just left with this dissertation. And
so dissertation meant you meant that the dissertation was still outstanding.
Definitely.
You had not completed it.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mahlangu, as I have your evidence, BNP was going to be the lead in this consortium in its engagements with SAA, correct?
That's true.
But BNP itself had no interactions with SAA, correct?
That's true.
Was that even the position after the award of the transaction advisor services?
That's true.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hofmeyer, I may have missed something.
Certainly.
At some stage, I think you were raising the point that he put the names of people from BNP, I think with their qualifications, but
yes.
Nobody from inline trading.
Yes.
I didn't hear what the answer was to that.
As I have it, he accepted that.
He
Correct?
accepted that, yeah. Okay. Let me. Ms. Hofmeyer put the question to you that it appeared that you only put staff from BNP as the people who were involved in the project, as I understood the question, and there was nobody mentioned from inline trading. Do you remember her asking that question?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Yes, and you confirmed that was so. That you did not include or mention anybody from inline trading.
Yes, I guess on my part it was an oversight, based on the fact that, as I said at the beginning, that I was not actually involved with this documentation. So at the beginning, when my guys at the office were running with it, Ngadi was part of it. Yes, and then at 11th hour I pulled out. So I think.
Did you say Ngadi?
Yes, Mr. Masoja. Mngadi.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. At 11th hour I pulled out based on the letter over the weekend.
Yes.
So I think things just fell through the cracks then.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that you only knew recently, not then, that he pulled out and suggested that somebody else's name be included in his place.
I saw on the, yes, I just saw, I only knew now as far as the email I thought
Yes.
he was actually just instructed my guys to actually to do that.
Yes.
Because I saw Mr. King, I thought perhaps because he was actually just engaging with my guys as far as the preparation of this document is concerned. So I thought that was, they understood. But when I saw the email, now it, it shows that he actually asked them to remove his details on that particular documentation.
Okay, let me make sure I understand that. Are you saying that at that time, you were aware that Mr. Ngadi had asked that his name be withdrawn or should not be in, and that the name of Mr. Brandon King be the one that would be put in the place of his name, but what you were seeing for the first time about 2 weeks ago or so was the email?
Through you, Chair, what I'm saying is, my understanding was Ngad was still part of this. There he is. And when things were done, because the communication happened over the weekend, and when things were done, for him to actually request one of our guys to remove his name, I was not aware of that. Yes. But when names of people were actually put in the documentation, my understanding is these are guys still inline trading guys. So I didn't actually think about it, to the point where I would start questioning as to why did he withdraw his information.
Yeah.
Yes. So that didn't actually bother me at that point in time.
Yes.
It's only now when, in hindsight with all the, the information that you realize, basically, yes.
Yeah, because one would expect that Mr. Ngadi, on your understanding, and as a matter of fact, having been the lead guy from inline trading, he came to you, he met with you for the first time, and he was very active and so on, that you would be surprised if in documents that were supposed to reflect who is involved with inline trading, who are the people in inline trading, you would be surprised if his name did not appear in that list, wouldn't you?
True, Chair.
Yes, and one would therefore, particularly for somebody that active in regard to inline trading's business, that one would expect that you would say, well, I want to find out how come, and that you would have asked.
That's true, Chair. As I said, I think when things were actually moving at that pace at that point in time, one actually didn't ask a lot, and for obvious, not that for obvious reasons, but things were just moving, and as I said, even this letter, I just got it now to say remove me, but no one even told me the office to say, because there is a letter to say we must remove him, because it was just addressed to one of the employees.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think on my part also, I'll actually, take responsibility for that, to say perhaps what one should have actually done was to actually ask as to why. But in hindsight, because I think when you run a business, we don't run a business with the intention that we audit ourselves in the process. So we
But at the same time, you have to be alert as to who you're dealing with, because otherwise you don't have the best interests of your own business at heart if you are not going to at least take reasonable steps to make sure that people that you are seen with are not, or you are seen to be associated with in business are not going to be people that may give your company a bad name.
That's true, Chair, I agree. Thank you.
Ms. Mahlangu, if I may, I'd like to proceed to those parts of the bid that you completed and in respect of which you needed to satisfy yourself as to the accuracy of the information you were providing. And for that purpose, I'd just like to preface the questions with the speed over the RFI submission is now over for the purposes of this bid submission, because that happened on the 16th of February, and now you've got a month and 2 days before you prepare and submit the bid submission. Do you accept that?
I guess before you submit, you have to prepare and submit
Indeed.
before you submit.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So there are a number of declarations that you gave in that bid that was submitted on the 18th of March 2016. I'd like to take you to the first of those. If you pick up the soft file in front of you, and you go to internal page 19 of 55, and for record purposes, that will be found in Exhibit DD2, which is Ms. Nancy's bundle at page 212. Do you see that document, Mr. Mahlangu?
It's P212.
PN 212, internal page numbering 19 of 55. Are you on that page?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. What is this document?
It's the declaration of interest.
And if you go over the page to internal page 20 of 55, which will be found in Exhibit DD1 at page 391, which is Ms. Stimple's bundle, please read for us what you are declaring when you sign that document. And I pick it up at the place indicated 3, declaration on that page. Can you read for us what you declare by signing that document?
I polysigned, oh, sorry. Through you, Chair, I polysigned Daniel Mahlangu, undersigned, the undersigned certify that the information finished paragraph 2.1 to 2.3.1 above is correct, except that the principal may act against me in terms of paragraph 23 of the general conditions of the contract, should this declaration prove to be false.
Thank you. Did you understand then what you were doing when you signed this declaration? You were giving that confirmation as to the correctness of the information.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. If we go back to the page, the aspect that I'm interested in is the one that appears at 2.2 on internal page 19. You'll see there that the declaration of interest asks you to answer the following question. Do you or any person connected with the bidder have any relationship, family, friend, or other, with a person employed by the principal who may be involved in the evaluation and or adjudication of this bid? Do you see that?
I'm not sure whether we're on the same page.
That's
Apologies.
2.2 at page PN 212, internal page 19 of 55.
Or 2.12.
The page is internal page 19 of 55.
Oh,
The one at the top is
So on which
PN.
file now?
On the soft file.
It's
On
a
this
smaller
file?
file.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you go back a page, I think you'll find at the bottom internal page 19 of 55.
Okay.
Thank you. Apologies, Mr. Mahlangu. I didn't realize you weren't there. Do you see clause 2.2 at the bottom of that page?
Yes, I do.
And what it asks you to answer is a question. Do you or any person connected with the bidder have any relationship, family, friend, or other, with a person employed by the principal, that in this case is a reference to SAA, and who may be involved in the evaluation or adjudication of this bid? Do you see that?
Yes.
I understood from your evidence this morning that you didn't inquire of Mr. Mngadi if he had any personal relationships with persons at SAA when you met with him originally. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you make any inquiries of him before you filled out this declaration?
No.
So how did you answer no to that question?
Because in our knowledge, Mr. Mngadi was actually running his own business,
Was a what?
running his own entity.
Was running his own entity,
Yes,
inline trading.
definitely.
Okay.
But then why wouldn't that still have applied? Because the question asks you whether you or any person connected with the bidder, and inline trading was your consortium partner.
Yes.
So why wouldn't they have been people that you had to establish whether they had any personal relationships with people who were going to be adjudicating this bid?
To be honest, I didn't actually ask them. Yes.
No, she understands that. She is asking why
What?
you didn't see it as important or relevant or as your duty to ask Mr. Ngadi before I give you an answer to this question. Maybe let's do it this way. Just look at that question.
Yes.
2.2. Do you see it?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it says, do you or any person connected with the bidder have any relationship, in brackets, family, friend, other, close brackets, with a person employed by the principal and who may be involved with the evaluation and or adjudication of this bid? You see that?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Now, of course, you did know whether you have had any relationship with any of those people.
That's true.
Yeah. But now it goes further. It says, any person connected with the bidder. Who was the bidder here? What was your understanding of who the bidder was?
It's us in inline trading.
Sorry?
It's BNP and inline trading.
Yes. So the question, part of the question then was, do you or does any person connected with BNP and inline trading have any relationship with a person employed by the principal and who may be involved with the evaluation and or adjudication of this bid? One in Mr. Mngadi would fall within that, isn't it?
That's true.
Yes. So do you accept that you should have checked whether he had any such relationship with the persons contemplated in that question at SAA? Do you accept that he is one of the people the question expected you to deal with when you say, no, there is no person connected with the bidder who has any relationship with anybody who might be involved in the evaluation or adjudication of the bid?
Yes, that's true, sir.
Yes.
Yes, I think obviously in our discussion, it didn't indicate to us whether he's got any relationships, any family or friend or other that are actually involved in the adjudication of this process.
Yes, but leave out what he did say. You were the one who was going to give an answer to the question, and you were supposed to give a truthful answer. Okay?
Yes.
Therefore, if you didn't know whether he had such a relationship with somebody at SAA, then you had an obligation to ask him, isn't it?
That's true, sir.
And the question is, you didn't ask him, why not? Before saying here, no.
The way I read the question was, in essence, I think focused on us as BNP Capital and our consortium. I agree with you, Chair, and Ms. Hofmeyer, that perhaps we could have actually asked that particular question. But in our engagement, at that point in time, we didn't actually, suspect anything. So, as I said, that time was of essence. So we just, signed a document and moved on.
Well, Ms. Hofmeyer told you earlier on the time when you didn't have much time, that is before the closing date for the RFI is gone. This is now when you had about a month to put in the bid, as I understand the position. So time was not a problem to find out who among the people who are involved in this bid on the part of your consortium might have a relationship with people at SAA.
Yes, I agree with Chair,
Yes.
with you, Chair. Hence I said, as far as the nature of business is concerned, I think I've been involved in many of these things, and I haven't been asked this particular question. So, now looking back in hindsight, perhaps not it's a question that's supposed to be asked on a consistent basis. But in our nature of our business, I haven't been actually asked this particular question. And when we actually engaged with Mungad, didn't give us any indication that is involved, or it doesn't actually, he's got any relationships. But I do agree with Chair. Perhaps we
Yes.
should have asked the question.
But the other thing, in terms of what Mr. Mngadi told you right from the beginning, in terms of your own evidence, it is that he had a long-standing relationship with SAA, isn't it?
That's true.
Yes. So I would have thought that when you see a question like this, and knowing that Mr. Mngadi is a person connected with the bidder, as contemplated in this question, that would be the time when you would say, you know what, Mr. Mngadi came here and he indicated he has been involved with SAA for a long time. I need to find out if he has got any such relationships before I can answer this question. That's what I would have expected you to do. What do you say to that?
No, I agree with you, Chair. I think in hindsight, if one given the benefit of the doubt, yes, all of us should be doing that. But I guess it's the nature of the business. So otherwise, we wouldn't actually complete this document if we had to go through each and every point and answer.
No,
Sorry.
Mr. Maslango, how can you say that? I mean, you are not supposed to sign any document unless you have read it, and you are not supposed to give information and give it as true when you don't know if it's true. And here, you are asked on the next page, you do certify. You say, I, Polisani Daniel Maslang, the undersigned, certify that the information furnished in paragraph 2.1 to 2.3.1 above is correct. So you are telling the people who must adjudicate here that your answers that you have given here are correct.
That's true, Chair.
And yet we find out now that you don't know, and you didn't know then, whether Mr. Mngadi, who was a person connected with the bidder as the question contemplated, had somebody with whom he had a family or other relationship at SAA. Can you see that it means that you gave incorrect information, because you gave the impression that you knew that there was nobody connected with the bidder who knew somebody at SAA who could be involved in the evaluation or adjudication of the bid, and yet you are saying that you didn't know.
Yes, Chair. I think I do agree in some of the aspects of your discussion, but perhaps it's incorrect to say I gave the wrong information. I think at that point in time when we did the bid, and based on information that was available to us, we took that decision.
No, let's deal with that. Did you know at that time whether there was anybody connected with the bidder who had any relationship, family, friend, or other, with a person employed by the principal and who may be involved with the evaluation or adjudication of the bid? Did you know?
No, there wasn't.
Yeah. No. Are you saying no, you did not know, or are you saying no, there wasn't anybody like that?
I didn't know.
Yes, but your answer here doesn't say you don't know. It says no, there was no such person. Look at the answer. You said no, didn't you?
Yes. Hence, I'm saying I did say I don't know. I mean, I did say no. And the reason why I did say no, because people amongst our team, no one actually had that relationship with SAA.
No, Mr. Maslangu. If the question requires you to indicate what you know, you have to indicate what you know. If you don't know, you say you don't know. Now here, you are being asked the question whether there was anybody connected with the bidder who had family relationships or friendship with anybody involved in the evaluation or adjudication of the bid. And if you didn't know, you needed to ask people or get whatever information so that when you answered from a position of knowledge.
I agree with you, Chair.
Otherwise, if you didn't make those inquiries, your only correct answer would be something like you did not have any such relationship, but you didn't know if there was anybody else who might have that relationship. But your duty was to check.
I agree with you, Chair.
Yes. And the question again is, why didn't you check? Why didn't you make those inquiries?
There was no doubt in my mind that anybody in our team had actually had that. Yes. However, in hindsight, Chair, yes, so that maybe we don't spend too much time. I think in hindsight, I agree with you that perhaps it's the exercise that one needs to do going forward. Yes, especially as far as this, exercises are concerned. But I think at that point in time, one just took it for granted.
But when you say in your team, do you include Mr. Mngadi?
Yes.
But you hadn't known Mr. Mngadi for a long time, unlike maybe the other people in your office. And I would have thought that you would think, no, this man I haven't known for a long time, I must ask him. You didn't think about doing it that way?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mahlangu, we've dealt with, what I'm focusing on now are documents and declarations that you were responsible for. And we've looked at the declaration of interest. I then want to take you to one of the letters that you sent out in the course of this engagement with SAA. It is a letter that was actually sent to the representative of GRISAG, Mr. van der Merwe. You reference it in your statement. It's the last annexure because it's an email that comes from Mr. Mngadi with the text of the letter that he wants you to send on to GRISAG. So I'm just orientating you. I want to find the letter first that went to GRISAG. You'll find that in Mr. van der Merwe's bundle, which is Exhibit DD3. Chair, you should also have that available to you. It's Exhibit DD3.
I don't have DD3 here, unless...
It's a file like this, if you can look this way.
Thank you. I'm indebted, Chair. Mine is in a hard lever arch file, so I wouldn't have been any the wiser. Mr. Mahlangu, if you turn in that bundle to page 18, it's under tab 4. Do you see that document?
Yes, I do.
Is that your signature on the document?
Yes, it's mine.
And is that a letter that you're familiar with having sent to Mr. Peter van der Merwe?
Yes, I've sent it, yes.
And let me just assist you, because you do provide in your statement the email version of this that came from Mr. Mngadi. You might recall that. It's right at the end of your bundle, and you'll find it there at page 145.
I'm sorry, what page?
145 of Mr. Mahlangu's bundle, which is DD 11, I think. No, DD4, apologies, Chair.
No, yes.
Do you remember that, Mr. Mahlangu?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mahlangu, this is a letter that was sent to Mr. van der Merwe on the 22nd of April. You'll pick up that date on the email version, which is attached to your statement. Do you see that?
Yes.
Thank you. And the evidence of Mr. van der Merwe confirmed that he received this letter on the 22nd of April. What I'm interested in is the first line of that letter, Mr. Mahlangu, because it says, please find attached under cover hereof a mandate from South African Airways whereby SAA, amongst others, mandates BHP, I think that's a typing error, capital, to raise and arrange funding for and on behalf of SAA for the purposes of the consolidation of SAA's debt of 15 billion rand. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
On the 22nd of April 2016, BNP Capital had not been appointed yet to source funds for SAA. Is that correct?
That's true.
So why does this letter state that it had been so appointed?
Through you, Chair. When I actually saw this letter, which was actually just an exchange between Mngadi and one of my employees at the office, I think it's only now when I actually pay attention to it, that because as far as the initial letter was concerned, it was actually just attaching our appointment letter as far as advisory is concerned. But when one goes through the detail of it, then it mentions the capital raising. It's only then that, I don't know why actually it was sent in this particular version, but it's only now that it raises eyebrows.
So you didn't check this letter before you allowed your signature to be appended to it?
As I said, it was just an exchange between...
I'm sorry, I'm still at 145. That is from Mr. Moyo, not from Mr. Mahlangu.
Indeed, apologies, Chair. You have to go back into Mr. van der Merwe's exhibit,
And
which
that's
is...
that page again?
That was page 18, 18.
18
Yes.
of the same file.
Of DD3. Sorry, Chair.
136.
We're in the soft file, which is Mr. van der Merwe's. There are so many pages today.
Okay,
If
page
you-
18.
18.
Yes, yes.
This is the letter, which
Mr.
is a
Mahlangu
replica
signed.
of the email.
Yes, yeah.
But this is the one that contains Mr. Mahlangu's signature.
Yes, yes.
So it is at this point that I asked Mr. Mahlangu whether he read this text of this letter before he sent it to Mr. van der Merwe.
Through you, Chair, it wasn't sent by me, it was sent by Ivan. So as I've indicated before, the guys at the office, that there's a template that they used, that they append it's actually my signature is there. So when I look at it, it was just a correspondence between Mngadi and Ivan, but memorandum of understanding between, I think there was a mistake here, with this BH, it's supposed to be BNP and Grisak. And eventually Ivan sent that letter to...
But Mr. Mahlangu, apologies, I did understand your evidence earlier to be that there was an electronic signature of yours available in BNP. Is that correct?
There is a template, letter template, yes, that they were using, which
Right.
the electronic signature was constantly there.
But I understand your evidence earlier to be you would nonetheless check letters that were being sent out in your name. Is that correct?
Not in most cases. It depends on the nature of that particular letter. Yes, it's for instance, for instance, in this particular case, it was just an engagement. When I read the subject of the letter, to me, it gave me an impression that Masocha is actually introducing Grisak into the picture. And it says, this is fine, basically, our letter, because there's
You say Masocha, that is Mr. Mngadi.
Yes.
Otherwise, the transcript will, anyone reading the transcript will think that's somebody else now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Chair.
Yes.
And Mr. Mngadi basically came up with this particular letter, yes, and had a discussion. There was a to and fro between him and one of my guys at the office. And eventually, one of my guys at the office put this letter on the letterhead and then attached the letter of appointment for transactional advisory and sent it with. So, and as far as I'm concerned, I didn't actually go through it that much because I thought, okay, fine, what's going on here? You actually, you've been actually, Mr. Mngadi is bringing Grisak on the table. and it's an introduction type of a discussion, because that was some of your responsibilities.
Mr. Mahlangu, I really would like to get clear what your knowledge was at the time that this letter was sent. Did you look at the letter before it was sent out by Mr. Moyo bearing your signature?
No, I didn't.
Did you learn of it shortly after the 22nd of April?
No, I didn't. I didn't actually. To be honest with you, it's only now this letter that makes sense to me. That
No. Well, when did you see it for the first time, this letter? And I'm not asking for a date. I'm meaning recently in preparation for the commission.
Definitely yes.
So at no point in 2016, when all of this was going on, were you aware of this letter?
No.
Does that concern you, that letters were being sent out under your name and representing your company in circumstances where you had no knowledge that those letters were being sent out?
Yes, through you, Chair. In some instances, I would be CC'd, yes, in those letters, as I even indicated at the beginning, that I had, professionals that were actually running some of these things. So if a letter is not sort of implicating, or there isn't much on that particular letter, it's just an introductory letter. So I wouldn't actually spend time on it.
Well, Mr. Mahlangu, I'm getting quite concerned. Did people in your office have your permission or authority to put your signature on letters that you had not approved or seen?
At some point they did. Hence, I had to actually come up with a policy to say no one actually uses my electronic signature going forward.
How had that come about, that you gave people in your office permission to put your signature on letters, correspondence that you had not seen? Through
you, Chair, I think it's the nature of our business. If, for instance, it's a question of the content of that in that particular letter and who it actually addresses to and what it says. So in most instances, what would usually happen is, if that letter goes to a particular client, then obviously one needs to actually look at that particular letter, or otherwise I'll get a sort of a brief on that part, on the content of the letter, because in most cases I would be away when actually that particular event is actually taking place.
I understand completely the position that not every letter from a company needs to be seen by the boss, by the person in charge. That I accept. Of course, in some cases you just can't operate on the basis that you must see every letter, okay? But what is normally done is, if you have got people at a certain level, you let them sign letters. The letters, they go out on the letterhead of the organization, but with their signatures and not yours. And the ones that go out with your signature would be the ones that, one, you have seen and you have approved, or the ones that might fall into a category which is non-contentious. Maybe if it's, you might have certain categories to say, no, if it's this or that, that's fine. But anything else, if it's going to go out with my signature, I must see. Otherwise, it must go out with someone's signature who has drafted it, who knows about it. That's what I would expect.
That's true, sir. I think in some instances, I would actually do that when time permits. But in others, depending, as I said, it depends on the seriousness of that particular letter.
But why wouldn't you? I understand you were saying you had senior people, experienced people So why wouldn't you let them sign correspondence that related to matters that they were dealing with? Particularly where you had not seen the correspondence, so they can take responsibility. Nobody can meet you in town and say, why did you send me such a nonsensical letter? And you don't know about it.
I understand, Chair. I think in this particular case, in hindsight, I think we actually never had any issue with the letters. And as I've said before, that what usually happened was there was a template that everyone was actually getting used to it, which had my signature already attached to it. So people would write whatever they want to write.
But that doesn't explain why you wouldn't let them, you wouldn't say to them, if you write a letter to somebody in regard to the business of the organization, you put your own signature, not my signature, unless I have seen that letter.
Yes, I agree, Chair. I think it was a fault on my part.
Mr. Mahlangu, do you accept that this letter was false?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. In terms of GRISAG, because you've introduced GRISAG in your explanation around this, did you have any direct interactions between Mr. van der Merwe and BNP Capital?
No.
Did anyone, to your knowledge, within BNP Capital have any interactions with Mr. van der Merwe?
I think it's Mr. Moyo at some point. Yes.
Do you know that as a fact, or do you surmise that?
You mean knowing in terms, because they exchanged some emails between the two of them?
Directly between Mr. Moyo and Mr. van der Merwe?
At some point it happened.
Because I'm going to pick up on this topic of what is stated in the letters that bear your name, because there are a great many facts about GRISAG that are put to SAA when BNP Capital is motivating for a cancellation fee. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am.
And who was responsible for obtaining those facts from GRISAG?
It's Mr. Mngadi.
And how would your team check those facts?
Okay, can I just understand the question? When you mean facts in terms of the fees or?
What GRISAG was doing. I'll take you to all the correspondence in due course, but there are lots of letters under your name.
Yes.
That say GRISAG is flying directors to Paris, that say GRISAG has got breakage costs, that say GRISAG is going to place a penalty of $5 million US on BNP Capital. I understand your evidence to be you had no interactions with Mr. van der Merwe, correct?
That's true.
So where do those facts that appear in your letters come from?
Mr. Mngadi.
Did he send them to you and then you put them in the letters?
Yes. Remember at the beginning, Mr. Mngadi actually is the one that had an interaction with GRISAG. Yes. So in our understanding with him was that he understands what GRISAG's needs are, given, because that's the function he was actually dealing with. So he understands what SA's needs are. So he was a gentleman that would actually, a representative of inland trade, now to go to GRISAG and say, GRISAG, what is it that you require, and provide that information to us.
So did you check those facts yourself, ever?
The email that he sent, that he said, okay, fine, because what it basically did is, he would send us a discussion that he had with GRISAG, and said, this is the discussion that I had with GRISAG. GRISAG actually wants this. Yeah. So would actually, follow that.
Did he give you a summary of the discussion, or did he give you the text of the letter that he wanted you to send to SAA?
The text of the letter.
Why didn't you just say to Mr. Mngadi, I know none of these facts. Why don't you just write to SAA and motivate on this basis for the cancellation fee?
As far as the cancellation fee, I'm not sure whether we're actually there now, see? I mean, Chair.
Well, she's
Yes.
asking you a general question, but it might.
Yes, because it's
relate to- yeah,
interlinked,
But
yeah.
basically, the question is, you were being given draft letters
That's true.
by Mr. Mngadi, which, if you sent out under your signature, would convey to either SAA or whoever, SAA, that you were saying these are the facts about Grisak, and yet you didn't know that those were the facts. You just heard from Mr. Mngadi. So the question is, if I understand correctly, the question is, why didn't you ask Mr. Mngadi to say, Mr. Mngadi, you are the one who knows whether these facts are true. Why don't you write under your own name to SAA and tell them these facts?
Thank you, Chair. I remember, Chair, at the beginning what I said was there were actually arrangements in place as to how we communicate to the client. So his responsibility was for him to actually communicate with us, communicate with the client, and communicate with other parties. So he was actually doing that role. So when he actually introduced Grisek into the equation, so we've never met Grisek, we've never heard of Grisek. So at that point in time when we said, there's Grisek, especially as far as this letter is concerned, that was sent initially. So secondly, when he actually brought the issue of the cancellation fee, because that issue was brought immediately after the award of the sourcing of funding letter. So on that letter, he basically said, this is what Grisek actually would want, yes. And basically had all the details, because all the details that have been actually, that basically read, detailed in the mail. Where we're sitting, we thought this is Grisek, what Grisek wants, because he introduced them. So even you can see even the correspondence where Mr. Van der Merwe was actually communicating directly with him. So he would actually send us, sort of forward us information from Pete himself, Mr. Van Merwe himself. So we had no doubt in our minds to say, this is exactly that information that comes from Grisek.
Mr. Mahlangu, I will come back to this point in due course once we've got the full story about the way in which these interactions were working between Mr. Mngadi, yourself, and SAA. But before we do that, I do, in fairness to you, want to go in time, first to the FSP license suspension of BNP, and then from there we will go to the cancellation fee in more detail. So if we pick up the FSP license issue, you'll find that at page 25 of your statement.
Ms. Hoffman, we are about
Yes.
2.5 minutes before 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, I think we will continue at least until 5.
Indeed, Chair.
We'll take a break at 4 o'clock, so maybe we should rather take it now. but-
It's appropriate now, Chair,
Yeah,
because I'm moving to
before
another
you're moving
topic.
into another.
Indeed.
So we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll resume at 4:10. We adjourn. Thank you. Let's proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Mahlangu, we're going to pick up the topic of the FSP license. That was,
How is our progress looking?
Chair, I am cautiously optimistic we might just make it by 5. If we
Okay.
don't, then it will be a small
Small portion.
section for
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
But I'm indebted to Mr. Mahlangu for his assistance this afternoon.
Yes.
We have been able to increase the pace to some extent.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mahlangu, on the FSP license issue, and I said we'd pick that up in your statement at page 24. That's where you have a heading, engagement with FSB and cancellation of contracts. And your bundle is DD4. Have you got page 24?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And then if we just go over the page from that heading to page 25, as I have it in that first paragraph on the page, you concede that having an FSP license was a requirement of the Transaction Advisor Services tender. Is that correct?
That's true.
And at the time that BNP bid for that tender, did it have an FSP license?
Yes, it did. That's true.
Thank you. At a point thereafter, as I have the facts, BNP received a notice from the FSB, as it then was, of an intention to suspend the license. Is that correct?
That's true.
And just to aid the flow, otherwise I can take you there, are you happy that that correspondence came through from the FSB to BNP Capital on the 23rd of March, 2016?
That's true.
And thereafter, there was further communication on the 12th of May from the FSB. What did the FSB communicate to BNP Capital on the 12th of May?
Can you get to that reference? Because of the 12th of May, I can't remember.
Oh, certainly. Let me assist. 23 March, I have your evidence to be you got a letter of the FSB's intention to suspend the license, correct?
That's correct.
And on the 12th of May, we'll go to it now, the FSB actually suspended the license. Is that consistent with your recollection?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Now, a suspension of a license is quite a serious matter in relation to the services required for that license, are they not?
I could say yes, however, the suspension comes with its terms and conditions.
Correct. Let's go to them, because I think that will be of assistance. You will find that in Ms. Stimple's bundle, which is Exhibit DD1. And let's start at page 597, if we may. Oh, I must tell you which one that's in. That's in Exhibit DD1C. They are in 3 parts, Exhibit DD1. I'm sorry, I'm wrong there. It's in B. Apologies.
What's the page number?
Chair, we're going to begin at 597, which is under tab 63.
Five, one.
597. And if you look for tab 63, it'll be under that.
Yes.
Do you have it, Mr. Mahlangu?
Yes, I do.
I'm just in fairness to you wanting to take you to the document. This is an email as I have it dated 23 March 2016. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And the subject of that email, could you tell us what that is?
Intention to suspend.
And if you go over the page to page 598, we won't spend long on it, but this is the letter, as I have it from the FSB, that informed you in paragraph 1 of the FSB's intention to suspend BNP's license. Is that correct?
That's true.
But we had moved in your evidence to the actual suspension because you said there are certain terms and conditions attached to that suspension. So let me take you to that. You'll find that in its covering email at page 603. It's a few pages on. What is the date of that email appearing at page 603?
It's the 12th of May. 12th of May 2016.
Thank you. And it's addressed to who?
Daniel at BNP.
And that is you,
Yes.
correct? And the subject of that email? Could you read that for us?
Suspension.
Thank you. And then if we go over to the actual notice of suspension that was attached to that email, you'll find it commencing at page 614. And I'd like us just to go through some of the aspects of that page. Could you read for us what is recorded by the FSB at paragraph 1 on that page?
Through you, Chair. The notice of intention to suspend the authorization of the license dated 18 March 2016 refers.
And then if you move to, that I have it is a reference to the previous letter that we've just looked at. Is that correct?
That's true.
And then if you go to paragraph 3 on that page, what did the FSB notify BNP Capital of on this date?
The licensee is hereby notified of the decision of the Registrar of Financial Services, providers registrar, referred to suspend its license to act as a financial service provider in terms of section 9.1, read with section 9.2 of the Financial Advisor and Intermediary Services Act, number 37 of 2002 Act.
Thank you. And then you referred to the conditions and terms attached to that suspension. I'd like to pick up one of those, which is important for our purposes. You'll find the first at the following page, page 615. Under the heading there of clause 6, which reads suspension of license, can you read to us what is recorded there?
The licensee's license is hereby suspended with immediate effect based on the following grounds and the reasons detailed above.
And then that proceeds, and it tells you about a period of suspension. And then if you go over the page to page 616, I'm interested in the first general term attached to the suspension, which you will find under paragraph 6.2 on that page. Can you read for us the first general term of that suspension?
The license, through you, Chair, the licensee must inform all affected clients and product suppliers concerned that its license has been suspended.
And Roman 3, under those general terms there, what does that record?
The licensee must, in consultation with the clients and product suppliers concerned, take reasonable steps to ensure that any outstanding business is transferred to another authorized FSP in the best interest of the clients.
Mr. Mahlangu, did you act in accordance with those requirements?
Yes, I did.
As I have it from your statement, you indicate that there was a letter of the 13th of May that you sent to SAA. Is that correct?
That's true.
You'll find that, Mr. Mahlangu, just for ease of reference, at page 27 of your statement, at paragraph 6.5 on that page. You say there, when the FSP license was suspended sometime in April 2016, I informed SAA of the suspension per letter dated 13 May 2016, attached here too as Annexure PDM 21. We can go to that in a moment, but Mr. Mahlangu, are you aware of Ms. Nancy's evidence on this question?
Yes, I'm aware.
Are you aware that she indicated that that letter was never received by SAA?
Yes, she did.
And you're aware of the document she took us to on the second day of her evidence, which is a letter, I provided a copy of it to your attorneys after that session, where she writes to you in July of 2016 and says, you've made reference to a previous letter to us in which you informed us about the FSP license suspension, but we don't have a record of it and we call on you to provide it to us. Do you remember that letter?
Yes, I do.
So do you have any records that show that you sent this letter on the 13th of May to SAA?
Through you, Chair. When I actually look at the letter, given that it was done in 2016, in my mind, the letter was actually sent, but the question, we've been actually struggling with my lawyers to locate as to who actually sent that letter, what did I give the instruction to? And we've been battling to actually find the correspondence to that effect.
Right, so as I have it, as matters stands, you can't find confirmation of that recollection in any email communication, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So with what level of certainty can you say it was sent on the 13th of May?
I guess with the high probability, because I think at that point in time we didn't have any, qualms about, we couldn't just specify a particular date and without any follow-up. So I don't know actually what transpired.
You don't know, so you're not certain it went on the 13th of May?
No, I'm saying I'm not sure what happened whether that letter went, whether she received it or not, but from her own statement, she did indicate that she hasn't received it. So from our side, when basically I engaged, when I actually sent that letter and engaged at the office, and that letter was said that it was sent, but because my discussion with my follow-up emails with her basically was saying, we've actually did inform you, yes, about this particular event.
Did you alert, or anyone in BNP's offices alert Mr. Mngadi to this suspension when you received it on the 12th of May, 2016?
He should have known, yes.
He should have, or do you know for a fact somebody told him?
No, I can't, yes, I don't know for fact, but it was sort of public information.
In what sense was it public in May 2016?
I think it was in the news, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it was subsequently in the news,
Yes.
but I'm not sure that in May 2016 it was. I'm just trying to get a sense, and I do understand that this is going back some years. I understand your evidence to be you don't know as a fact that somebody told Mr. Mngadi on the 12th of May 2016 that BNP Capital's FSB license had been suspended. Is that right?
That's true.
But is your sense that somewhere in that period he came to learn of that fact?
I can't talk on his behalf, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. So you're not aware of anyone at BNP actually telling him in that period?
No.
Thank you. I'd like to go to some email correspondence that happened between SAA and representatives of BNP, including yourself, around this issue in July. And we will find that in Ms. Stimple's evidence, which is Exhibit DD1, and I'd like you to take out File B for that purpose.
Exhibit DD1.
1B.
B.
Thank you, Chair. And it's near where we were previously, the page I'm interested in is page 575. It's under tab 62. Mr. Mahlangu, just in the interests of time, we have been through these emails before, but there is an email in the second half of that page from Mr. Moyo. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And who is that email sent to?
Ms. Pumeza, which is the CFO of, acting CFO then of SAA, and Yusla Fikelepi, which I think that's a legal risk and compliance.
That's correct. Just for the record, Ms. Pumeza is Ms. Pumeza Nancy. And who is copied on that email?
It's Daniel, it's me.
Right, so won't you read the text of that email for us?
We can confirm that the funding entity has an FSP license is authorized under South African law to provide these financial products. Here attached the FSP license.
What is the date of that email?
It's the 6th of July.
2016.
Yes, 2016, sorry.
Mr. Mahlangu, were you surprised to see Mr. Moyo writing this on the 6th of July 2016 when your license had been suspended in May?
Yes, I was.
So what did you do about it?
I guess at that point in time, one was actually involved in a whole lot of things. When I saw this email, obviously, in hindsight, this was sort of an incorrect thing to do, to actually send, because I think he was just doing administrative work, just forwarding information to SAA, administrative information. So it included, that information that he sent included our license as well.
When did you become aware of this email? Would it have been around the time it was sent, sometime in July of 2016 or much later?
Chair, when I actually saw this email, it was during the time when I was constantly engaging with FSP. And I mean, it was a public, knowledge that our FSP license was suspended. So I couldn't understand why you'd have actually sent it.
But I'm trying to get in terms of time frame. Would it have been around July? Would it have been August or much later? It was sent in
July.
In July, on the 6th of July. So I'm trying to understand how soon after it had been sent did you become aware of it, more or less?
Sometime in July, yes.
Sometime in July?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mahlangu, on that very day, did you become aware of it because you were copied on the email?
Hence I'm saying through you, Chair, that it was on my part. Obviously, I was not. I saw an email coming through, but I didn't pay attention to it because my understanding is our license was already expired, and we're actually in the process of getting another FSP on board to actually assist us with this particular exercise. So I didn't understand why, when we actually had another FSP.
Yeah, hang on. The question is whether you became aware of the email on the same day that you were copied.
No.
Was it maybe the following day, within the same week, or after 2 weeks, or more or less? How far from the date of sending? Or it's difficult to say?
Yes, it's difficult to say because I think at that point in time, I was really under pressure. There were so many things happening.
Except that I thought you said a few minutes, a minute or two ago, that you saw the email coming, but you didn't pay attention to it.
Yes, what basically I meant was, when the email, because the email hits it comes through to my account. Yes, but at some point in time, one doesn't actually pay attention to the emails till you're actually alerted to it.
Does that mean that you know that you saw it arrive, but you didn't read it for whatever reason and read it later? Or is the position that you didn't see it arrive, but you did read it much later?
No, Chair. I think when the email came through, I didn't see it then on the same day. Yes, I didn't pay attention because I received so many emails on the day. So, but at that point, hence I'm saying it could have been sometime in July, when I actually go through my documentation. Then I came across it. But at the same time, hence I was saying I was surprised as to why would someone send such a license when it's a known fact that our license has been suspended.
Okay.
Ms. Mahlangu, maybe I can assist you, because 2 days later you wrote to South African Airways about the FSP license issue. That letter you'll find 2 pages back in the file in front of you, Exhibit DD1B, and it's at page 573. Do you see that letter?
Yes, I do.
It's got a handwritten 8th of the 7th, 2016. Do you see that in the top right-hand corner?
Yes, I do.
Chair, Ms. Nancy's assisted us in the evidence. That date is confirmed in the emails between herself at
Yes.
SAA and Mr. Mahlangu. Mr. Mahlangu, I take it you don't dispute that's the date of this letter, is that right?
I can't confirm it, yes.
You can't
I'm
confirm,
sorry.
but you don't dispute it.
Was that date put in by Ms. Nancy?
Who precisely put that in is not clear,
Oh, okay.
but Ms. Nancy's letters later
Yes.
indicate that this letter was received from
On that
BNP on the 8th
Okay.
of July.
Okay.
And Mr. Mahlangu, what I'm interested in there is what you say to Ms. Nancy on the 8th of July 2016 in the first 2 lines. Will you read that for us?
Through you, Chair. I would like to clarify the issue of the FSB license. BNP Capital received a letter from the FSB dated 12/05/2016, indicating its intention to temporarily suspend BNP Capital license for a period of 3 months, based on the reason that, according to the FSP, to the Phase Act, Section 10, the key individual failed to successfully complete the first level regulatory examinations applicable to the categories or subcategories for which they are authorized or approved.
Thank you. Did you compile this letter?
Yes, I did.
Why then did you state that the letter from the FSB of the 12th of May indicated its intention to temporarily suspend BNP license? Why did you not say that the letter suspended BNP's license?
I can see you through you, Chair. I think it was a wording on my part, which I can see. I agree what you're saying, but I think it was maybe incorrect to write it the way I did.
So, because we've gone through the evidence already, in March you'd been told about the intention to suspend, correct?
That's true.
And by May you were told the license had actually been suspended with immediate effect, correct?
That's true.
But you conveyed to SAA only an intention to temporarily suspend the license, and that is false.
That's incorrect. That's, yes, I put it incorrectly. It was not an intention to mislead anyone, but it was
And,
incorrect.
well,
yes.
where in this letter do you tell them about the other FSP licensee who you're getting on board to take over the work from you?
You mean on this particular letter?
Yes.
I think there's been some correspondence between us.
Chair, while I was questioning Mr. Mahlangu, I had an indication from his legal representative that there's some documents. I
Yes.
haven't seen those documents. I don't
Yes.
know what
What
they
say.
want to do with them, but I
Yes.
see Mr. Mahlangu interacting with his legal representatives.
yes.
I don't know what is most appropriate, because certainly I would like to see those documents before we
Yes.
deal with them.
Yes. Mr. Mahlangu, do you believe that your or somebody in this room has got the document that might help you?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Maybe they should make it available to you,
Certainly.
and then you might, depending, you might be able, you might need quite a few minutes to read it, or you might be able to quickly have a look and be able to proceed. If we need to take a 5 minutes adjournment, then we can do that.
Certainly, Chair.
I don't know whether you prefer that we rather take that 5 minutes adjournment, or they let you have the document and then you see whether you need more time.
I would be able quite quickly to identify whether I've seen it before. So maybe we
Yes,
take
yes.
that
Yeah.
moment or two,
Yeah.
and I can come back and let you know.
Yes, let's do that.
Thank
They
you,
can
Chair.
give it to you, yeah.
Chair, I can confirm that the first of these in the pack is a document we have seen before. It's the letter of the 13th of May, as I understand Mr. Mahlangu's evidence, that he alleges was sent through, but which SAA has no record of. The ones after that, if I read them quickly and locate them in time, they are now later than the 8th of July, 2016. And I'm working quickly,
Yes,
forming that view. If
Yes.
I've read them incorrectly, then I would like to take more time. But if that is
Yes.
all that we have in this pack, I'm happy to proceed, because I've
Yes.
certainly seen what happened on the 13th of May,
Yes.
and I know of correspondence later,
Yes.
but where I'm focused is the 8th of July
Yes.
at the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Mahlangu, are you happy to proceed on that
Yes, we can
basis?
proceed.
Then it's
Okay.
not clear to me you need this pack right now, because all that we're interested in currently is what has happened up until the 8th of July. And you have available to you, in your own statement, the document that your recollection says was sent to SAA on the 13th of May.
That's true.
And you have in front of you right now the letter of the 8th of July that we were focusing on. That's the one in Ms. Stimple's bundle, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Please tell me at any point if you want to make reference to the later correspondence.
That's true. I think you subsequently asked me a question as to when did I inform SAA about, remember, just to go back, there's some of the conditions of the suspension was said to us.
Yeah.
What, one is engage with your client and inform them. And then secondly is if you've got a business, which are products or financial
Suppliers.
products, yes,
Yeah.
engage
must
with,
tell them.
yes, no, engage with the licensed FSP and move those products to that licensed FSP.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Mahlangu, if I might be clear just about my question so we don't lose each other. I didn't actually ask when did you tell them that you'd found another FSP licensee to transfer the business to.
Yes.
I said, looking at the letter of the 8th of July, why in that letter do you not tell them about a partner that's been secured?
I think post that letter, there've been subsequent engagement with SAA.
Indeed, but
Yes.
for present purposes, I'm interested in not what happened after the 8th of July. I'm interested in what happened on the 8th of July in your communications with SAA. And Mr. Mngadi, in fairness to you, let me explain why. The 13 May letter is quite different to this letter. The 13 May letter does what your suspension required you to do. You'll recall that. You can get it in front of you if you'd like to. It's at page 143 of your exhibit, which is DD4. But I'm sure you'll recall in the last paragraph of that letter, which SAA says it never received, you say the following: the conditions of suspension require that BNP work with another authorized financial service provider until it has fulfilled all its suspension conditions. Accordingly, we have engaged Creed Capital Partners, of which its license has been attached. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Right. But SAA says it never got this letter. Okay? The next thing that happens in time is on the 6th of July, your employee, Mr. Moyo, tells SAA that you have a current valid FSP license. We saw that email, correct?
That's true.
And in the letter that SAA says it did receive, which is the one we're looking at dated the 8th of July 2016, you make no reference to having secured another partner to take over the business, and you also incorrectly represent that the license has merely been, there's an intention to suspend it, and do not say it has been suspended. And so I must put it to you that that is a misrepresentation of the facts on the 8th of July. And I must query from you why you did not tell them about the services being moved to another FSP licensee.
Through you, Chair, if you look at the letters that are before you, that have been forwarded to you, there's a discussion between me, that the letter that was sent to Ms. Nancy, is about the new FSP that we actually have secured. So I agree with you that on the 6th of July, when my employee made a mistake, which was a gravely sort of incorrect, to actually say our license actually has been active when...
It's still valid.
Yes, when it was public knowledge. I'm not sure, I think it was just, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just, it's a big mistake. But there was no intention of misrepresentation, because we've never done that. We don't have a history of going to our clients and misrepresent ourselves, or any facts for that reason. So hence, if you check the second email, which was sent to Ms. Hansi, that you've got, we did indicate to her, to say, we've actually sent an email with correct information, with the license service provider, and we've indicated to the CEO. That is why I was saying to the CEO to say, this is a new service provider that we've got on board to assist us with this particular exercise. So we did do that. So it's not like we just hoping that this thing, the issue is going to go away. We did actually actively engage on it.
Ms. Mahlangu, do you accept that if you had made the suspension of your license known to SAA on the 13th of May, you could not have been awarded the extension of the contract to source the funds for SAA?
I can't say yes to that. Because in my view, I think I did actually mention it in our statement, to say what actually puts us in a very difficult spot, even with our license, because our license was a private equity license. And when SAA requested a license, even the FSP themselves, if they say to us, move products, we don't have products, we don't have anything. So as far as FSP is concerned, they are thinking, as far as BNP Capital is concerned, it's got actually people's money that they need to move, or they're selling products that they need to actually get an authorized service provider to actually look after those products. As far as SAA is concerned, on the other part, because capital raising doesn't actually require an FSP license, and unfortunately it's a requirement that we need to fulfill, and we actually made attempts to that, to say, let's fulfill this unusual condition as far as this exercise is concerned. But when we got suspended, then it put us in a very precarious conditions, because you get suspended and someone says to you, move the funds that you have into another FSC, but you don't have a fund. And the service that you're actually providing to SAA, it's not regulated services. So we find ourselves in that position.
Mr. Mahlangu, you accepted in your evidence previously that an FSP license was a requirement of the Transaction Advisor Services tender, correct?
Yeah, I said it was a requirement.
Indeed.
Yes, but transactional advisor doesn't need an FSP license.
It's a separate matter. You accept that it was a requirement of the tender,
I
and you
agree.
couldn't have been awarded the tender if you didn't have one, correct?
I agree.
Your appointment to source funds from SAA was an extension of the scope of that previous transaction advisor services role. Are you aware of that?
Sorry. As far as the sourcing of funds was concerned, we actually did a proposal, yes, to SAA to say, SAA, this is our proposal. And in my view...
Hang on, Mr. Matlangu. The question is, do you accept that it was an extension of the scope that you were originally going to do for SAA?
Technically, yes.
Thank you. If it was a requirement for your original appointment that you needed an FSP license, what is your comment on my proposition that it was a requirement for any extension of those services as well?
Through you, Chair. I think you partly what you're saying is the truth, because if it becomes an extension, I think you actually evaluate it on the basis of information that you submitted initially. But as far as that aspect of capital raising is concerned, it doesn't require a license.
Understand that, but Ms. Nancy's evidence, just so that you have the benefit of it and you can answer with any comment you may have, was that it would not have been regular for SAA to have awarded you the extension of the scope if they had known any point prior to that your FSP license was suspended. You're aware that that was her evidence?
Yes, I'm aware, thank you.
But your evidence, as I have it, is your recollection is that they got that notice on the 13th of May, but you can find no documentary proof of that. Is that correct?
That's true.
Thank you. Mr. Matlangu, I propose that we then move to the next topic, and we may even be able to complete it before 5 o'clock, which will leave only one or two matters for tomorrow morning. This relates to the fee on the sourcing of funds of 1.5%. And I have it from your evidence previously that you had no engagements with GRISAG directly or Mr. van der Merwe. Is that correct?
That's true.
I also understand you not to have attended the meeting on the 8th of June where that term sheet was signed at SAA. Is that correct?
That's true.
And you didn't have any other direct dealings with GRISAG. Is that right?
That's true.
Were you then aware that the term sheet that was signed, if that transaction had gone through, was going to earn BNP Capital another 75 million rand?
I'm not sure which aspect of it you're referring to.
Okay. In the term sheet that was signed on the 8th of June, there was a 1% fee that was going to be paid to GRISAG initially on any drawdown on the facility. And then Mr. van der Merwe's evidence was the arrangement between BNP Capital and GRISAG was that you would each share that 1% in equal portions, half-half. Are you aware of those negotiations?
Through you, Chair. When the term sheet gets drafted, I remember we received two term sheets, and one term sheet basically was indicative term sheet as far as the terms and conditions were concerned. And one term sheet as far as the commitment fee, which is what was concerned, was actually 1%. And it was erroneously put between us, which is BNP Capital, and GRISAG. And then that term sheet was amended, yes, to be sent to the CFO. And when it's sent to the CFO, it said this is amended term sheet. And also, all the rates actually have improved, because even the first one that was sent, if you check on the margins, we're all sitting at 4%, even the fixed rate was 4%. And then the amended term sheet was sitting at 3.5%, and also the margin was 3.5%. And we removed ourselves there because we're not a financial institution, and GRISAG is. They're the ones that are entitled to that commitment fee.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Just so that we can look at the document that you know quite well and we can have the benefit of it, you'll find it in Ms. Stimple's bundle, which is Exhibit DD1B. That's the big one we've been working on for some time. And you'll find it there under tab 54, which is at page 532.
Sorry, number?
Apologies. So it's under tab 54, and it's page 532. This, as I have it, is what you were referring to in your testimony under the section pricing. Is that right?
That's true.
Ms. Mahlangu, just to give you the benefit, this is the term sheet that was signed on the 8th of June. That has been confirmed by Ms. Nancy in her evidence. And if we go to the section on pricing, it reflects as interest rate 3.5% and margin 3.5%. Is that what you were referring to?
That's true.
And right at the bottom of that section on pricing, it says other fees. And there it reflects a 1% fee will be payable by SAA to GRISAG AG on each drawdown amount received. Do you see that?
Yes, that's true.
And did I understand your evidence correctly to be that your understanding was that BNP Capital would not receive any portion of that 1% fee?
That's true.
What do you base that information on?
Through you, Chair, as I've indicated, in my experience, in the fundraising experience space, only funders charge a commitment fee, and for obvious reasons. It's because they charge that commitment fee, it's a fee that they charge for them to actually commit to that particular funds that they set aside for whatever client.
So can I be clear, your evidence on this is not based on any actual interaction with Mr. van der Merwe or Mr. Mngadi?
My interaction with this is, I received two of these, and when I actually went through it, I actually queried to say, why are we actually included here? And then it went there, because as far as we're concerned, we're just advisors, and then we get a success fee, not a commitment fee. We're not part of the funding.
Ms. Mahlangu, I haven't seen that other version. It would be useful if you could make that available to the Commission, but we can still ask a few follow-up questions. Mr. van der Merwe's evidence was that there was an agreement between BNP Capital and GRISAG that this 1% would be shared between the two parties. Is your evidence that that was not agreed between the parties?
No, we haven't agreed on that.
Would you know whether Mr. Mngadi had struck that deal with GRISAG?
I wouldn't know.
So it is possible that there was an arrangement on the side between GRISAG and Mr. Mngadi that 1% would be shared in equal proportions?
I wouldn't comment on it. I wouldn't know.
It's possible. You don't know that
Yes.
that didn't happen?
Yes.
Thank you. Please, would you, if possible overnight, provide us with that other version, which you say you queried, so that the 1% would now reflect only being payable to GRISAG AG?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Chair, we're quite close, but there are just one or two aspects that I can conclude on this, and then we'll start a new topic in the morning.
Okay.
Mr. Mahlangu, even if you weren't standing to benefit from the 0.5%, which we've calculated to be 75 million, the fees that you were going to earn in relation to the sourcing of funds were in the order of 256 million. Is that correct?
I wouldn't know.
Well, you were awarded the sourcing of funds work on the basis that you would charge a 1.5% fee on 15 billion rand, correct?
That's incorrect. If you can see our communications between us and Ms. Nancy, yes, that fee was actually 1.25. However, it was based on capital raised, not necessarily the entire 15 billion.
That's interesting to me, because SAA decided to award this to you on the basis that it would cost SAA 256 million. Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware.
So from your vantage point, there was no agreed 256 million at all.
Yes, through you, Chair. I think from where I'm standing, I had no agreement with the SAA. Nothing was signed. Nothing was agreed upon. Never received a letter to say, you've sent us this proposal. We agree on this proposal. Nothing whatsoever was actually sent to us. So as far as I'm concerned, we actually ran this exercise without any agreement in place. Yes, so I wouldn't know. So we're actually making proposals. Hence I'm saying, you're talking about 1.5, but eventually the fee went to 1.25. Yes, but still, SA didn't come back to us about whether that 1.25 is feasible or it makes sense, whatever the case is.
Ms. Mahlangu, for your benefit, that is certainly consistent with the letter of award that you got, because the letter of award that you got didn't specify a fee, did it?
Yes, definitely.
It just said you've been awarded to source funds for SAA, and then it spoke about other terms and conditions that would be agreed thereafter. Was that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair, that concludes this aspect. We're about 2 minutes before 5, but I am moving to a new topic. So if we could do that
Yes.
in the morning.
No. And you think we might need, what, another 30 minutes?
I would think so, Chair.
Yeah.
So possibly starting 9:30 would be adequate.
I was thinking then if we will need more or less 30 minutes, maybe we may as well start at 10 and to try and finish the witness for tomorrow. We could go into the
Yes,
evening. Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
We've got no difficulty with that,
Yeah.
and I have confirmed with the witness for tomorrow that he has availability in the
Okay.
evening.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll adjourn then, Mr. Mahlangu, and we'll start at 10 o'clock tomorrow, so come back tomorrow at 10.
Thank you.
We'll adjourn for the day, and we'll start at 10 tomorrow. We adjourn.